All right, Nitai, I'm excited to have this conversation. Maybe we'll just jump right in. Can you tell me your full name
Mm.
and what the experience was that got you interested in seeing yourself doing psilocybin therapy professionally?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'm really glad to be here. Nitai Aleksiewicz.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mouthful. Best party trick I have actually is just saying my name. So I always say that, the way that I arrived at psilocybin seemed both completely out of nowhere. And yet, when I look back, it was perfectly aligned with everything in my life up until then. And I jokingly say, I didn't find the mushrooms found me. and, I had been working with populations with higher levels of trauma for a few years. And there was a catalytic factor in my life, the death of my father, that made me realize that grief and how our society is taught to suppress grief and to deal with death and dying of all types was profoundly unhealthy. And after returning from my experience of dealing with how a culture deals with that in the East as opposed to the West, something shifted in me where all I wanted to do was better understand my own grief and help others go through major life transitions and loss. And that started me on a path that led me to psilocybin in the seemingly scenic route, right? But really, what happened is along the way, I was working in outpatient drug addiction. I was working at a rape crisis center. I was working with all these people who had experienced extreme levels of trauma. And basically, a friend of a friend out of nowhere just kind of contacted me and we developed a little bit of a relationship. And one day he was like, Hey, I actually think you would be really good at this. I had someone drop last minute. Are you interested in facilitating a small group psilocybin retreat? I know you have trauma informed experience. And I knew in my gut before he even asked me that I was going to be there.
Mm.
Like he had another facilitator at the time. And in my gut, the moment he said it, I was like, you're going to be facilitating that.
When was this?
That was July of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And has basically been a wild ride ever since then, because the moment I facilitated that journey and I saw the impact that this medicine had on people with higher levels of trauma, I knew without a doubt it was my purpose. Like my whole heart felt like it was expanding open in my chest. And that moment where you see your path and it's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, that's what it was for me. I was like,
Mm.
okay, this is it.
Yeah. So you're at that point where you're very interested at least in pursuing this further after that experience. How do you then take the step to do this more and more? And how did you sort of craft your style, like how you work with patients of clients? How do you sort of think about that, like your approach to it versus other people?
Yeah, I definitely drove in a little bit. It was definitely a trial by fire, but what I really allowed to be my North Star was the all the trauma informed work I'd done, like understanding the nervous system, understanding how mindset and core wounds and limiting beliefs impact someone and their entire way of experiencing the world, and understanding that in order for someone to have the deepest experience with the medicine, what is crucial is that they feel trust and safety in relationship with the facilitator and the sort of organization or group that they're going through. And so I did a combination of taking on some mentors, I moved to Oregon shortly thereafter, looking into going through a formal facilitation program and creating an environment and circumstances while I was building this. I ended up coming on to build this psychedelic retreat company for about a year. And what's interesting is even though, this was not in Oregon, I actually exceeded the OHA standards. Just my own internal instinct created such a safe environment. We would have actually exceeded the current OHA and, limits and rules and regulations. Stuff like, having a 2-to-1 facilitator ratio, having a nurse on staff.
This is in your retreat for
Yeah,
that year?
yeah.
Okay, got it.
Having a nurse on staff at every retreat. Like basically we were covered. We
Yeah.
had a medical professional on
Yeah.
site. We were
Maximum cautiousness in the beginning
maximum
days. Yeah, okay,
cautiousness
got it. Yeah.
and preparation, like in that retreat, we developed a 30-day preparation program and integration. And this was all very instinctual for me. It was like, how do you best care for someone who has this kind of history, who has just experienced something with the potential level of impact that a psilocybin journey can have? And then how do you keep them in community afterwards?
Right. Maybe let's go in order here. So somebody comes to Meadow, works with you, has a few preparation calls, which might be 2 for a couple, an hour or so each, and that may vary slightly, but how do you structure these calls? What should someone expect when they get on a call with you, a preparation call?
Yeah, thank you for asking. First of all, I absolutely love working with you guys because I feel like you do have a meticulousness about your way of doing things and the way you even set up clients for spaciousness before, during, and after a journey that I don't feel like a lot of other people are doing. And I really believe in that. So when someone first hops on a preparation call with me, a lot of what I'm doing is really getting curious and inquiring about their life. Like, hey, what brought you here? Like, what feels most alive for you? What do you feel is important? And what do you desire to disclose to me about, things in your history, possible traumas and stuff that you feel might still be impacting you now, or that you feel like it would be wise for me to know about? And we hold all of that with great care. Then we look at their current environment. What are the current stressors active in your environment? And how do we get out in front of those? Like, how do we create a really, really small changes before we go into the ceremony that set you up for success? So that's probably preparation. I like to do, if possible, three 90-minute preparation sessions, 60 to 90, depending on what we need. So the first one is really just like, hey, let's get to know each other.
Yeah.
And then the second one, and really kind of paint a picture of past, present, and possible future. The second one is really, honestly, has to some degree paperwork and really actually getting into the way that the medicine impacts the body. Like, let's get a little nerdy now. Let's talk about the physical safety. I take people through physical, emotional, and spiritual safety in the preparation process. So physical gets into, like, let's really iron out like how your body responds to feeling out of control. Let's take a look at, how your nervous system responds to stress. Let's actually walk through, the way that the medicine often impacts the body, with the understanding that every individual is unique. And let's begin to tailor this process exactly toward what you need to feel safe.
And what are the aspects of the tailoring? Is it the music? Is it the questions you're
Yeah.
asking them? Is it the frequency of community? Like, what are your levers that you can pull?
Yeah. So one thing that we would look at is definitely someone's sensitivity. Like, how do your senses respond to different stimulation? And I actually generally take someone through a form where I'm jotting down notes of all their 5 senses, right? And we're really looking at that. Then we look at the nervous system, which is, okay, do you have a tendency? And if you don't know what that means, I'll just ask you the right questions that'll lead you to the answers. Like, do you have a tendency to go into fight, flight, or freeze. When you can we begin to attune you to understanding the nuances of, oh, I think anxiety is coming on. And then in that process, we'll start to also develop tools where the client can empower themselves to downregulate. So say somebody tends toward high anxiety. What we'll start doing then is looking at how the client works. Like, how do you tend to respond to different things? Like, for some people, that's going to be movement. For some people, that's going to be breath work. For some people, and then we take into account, like, hey, if you can't move, or we'll look at, like, oh, if you're in bed, like, hey, maybe start kind of shaking your legs or tremoring your legs if you feel that excess energy. Okay, if that's not really how you work, if you get stuck in your mind, then what we're going to do is we're going to create an anchor statement that you can repeat to yourself when you feel like you're looping, that we have already started creating as an empowerment statement. Or, if what you need is to focus on something you're grateful for, to tie you back in to, like, your happy place, we'll start actually understanding what uniquely is going to best serve, anchor, ground, and stabilize.
I feel like your genius, I'm sure among many, is, but the one that seems to be most obvious is your understanding of yourself in an intuitive way. Like, you sense yourself really acutely. I think you're very, we were talking earlier, you're very aware before you get sick. So you don't get sick. You're aware when your immune system goes down. You're very in tune. You pick up on the small little signals of your being and your body and your energy. And I think that that's such an awesome thing to be able to give to other people. And so I guess that brings me to the next question, which is, what's the type, how does a client know if they'd be a good fit for you? If it's, and does it go down this path where it's like somebody, anxiety, depression, there's some inner pain that they're not aware of. But yeah, maybe I won't even say that. Is there a specific group of people that you tend to find most attracted to working with, and vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. People who have felt as though their pain has been too much for everybody. I don't know how or why I understand that so acutely, but there is very little that's too much for me. I have a very high capacity for sitting with a range and a spectrum of human emotions that often comes from, and many human emotions happening at once, that often comes from people who have experienced higher levels of trauma and who have gone through layers and layers with it. So I live the work.
You handle the intensity.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that self-attunement has been over the course of me continuously meeting myself again and again in all of my emotions, in the entire spectrum of healing. And I'm always working on myself. And so the way that I approach clients is not hierarchical. Like, I want a client who's like, hey, you and I are going to walk side by side because I'm in this work. I know there's some big changes that need to happen, and I'm ready and committed to that transformation. And I want someone who can hold a whole range of what that might look like and just be very adaptable. Like, I'm the kind of person that I'm really like tuning in to you, the details of you, your environment, your growth on multiple levels. It's energetic, it's intellectual, and I do not presume to ever tell you what your healing process should look like. But I'm also very direct in a way that is about asking the right questions. So I want, most of the time, the clients that come to me have done work on themselves already, enough to be aware, but they're also at this point where they're deeply committed to doing whatever needs to be done. And I always tell people, like, hey, you're not going to come in, do a psilocybin session and poof, everything is suddenly perfect. But I will tell you that the power that this medicine has to make a transformation in your life is some of the highest I've ever seen. But you have to be willing to do the work after. And most of my clients that come to me are deeply committed. Like they're in it for whatever it takes to commit to themselves and their healing. And I have a spectrum of how long I've worked with clients, but generally we're not looking at it like, hey, I'm in, I'm out. That journey was cool, great. I mean, we're looking at like, this is a long-term process and I'm in it for myself.
Yeah. That's beautiful. How do you handle it? I mean, presumably people that come in with this, intense trauma in their life might be rightfully concerned about the painful or intense experiences that might be in this journey. When that arises, how do you position yourself? Is it something that you lean into more involvement, try to be there with them? Do you try to give them space, or do you have a philosophy on how you act when things get really hard for people in facilitation?
Yeah, I mean, the philosophy is I am the grounded, rooted tree. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere. And I will continuously steer you back to knowing your own power in this process. And power to me does not necessarily look like calm and stable and whatever. Power is you being the truest to yourself. If you have never, ever expressed that rage, and I mean, obviously within limits, like, we have limits like, hey, don't, harm yourself or the environment or others.
Yeah.
But if you just need to primal scream, or if you need to cry or rage, and it's something you have never been able to do before, and that actually is opening something for you, like, I'm so here for it. And for me, because I don't shut down, or because I've worked so hard to accept the totality of my own emotional experience, I can really, really be calm and grounded and present with whatever arises. And I can sense when it's a breakthrough or when it's like repeating a cycle. Right. And usually I can steer it like, hey, okay, that's where the cycle's repeating. And I can ask the right question to help a client then find something new in that experience. Or, what the medicine excels at is changing your mind, giving you a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so
be grateful for the spiral.
As a non-hierarchical guide, I'm just here to walk beside you. We're all walking each other home, and to ask you the right questions at the right time. That's it. Yeah. And to be that co-regulation where I'm calm and grounded, no matter what your process needs to look like.
I love that. What's one piece of advice you wish that clients would understand about the healing process that you think most people don't?
I feel like this is endemic in our medical paradigm. And it's the idea that you take something to deal with the symptoms and poof, that's it. Magic fix it all pill. We're done. Healing is such a process. And to me, healing is not arriving somewhere and having all the parts you don't like about yourself suddenly gone. Healing is shifting your experience of those parts you don't like. Healing is how you begin to relate to the healing process itself. And, when you can truly accept yourself in the spectrum of all these things, I truly believe that for the most part, disease is caused by what I jokingly say, the feelings we have about our feelings. So it's like you're experiencing grief and you put shame on top of grief. And all of a sudden, grief is under a 400-pound weight and it's suppressed and it begins to fester and all these things are coming out sideways. But you have to deal with the shame so you can remove the 400-pound weight so you can actually experience the beautiful, raw, deep grief that's present underneath. That's super legitimate. We just haven't been given social or cultural tools or acceptance in which to let that move. So to me, energy emotion is allowing that energy emotion to move freely, because once it's moving, you have the opportunity to then alchemize or transform it into something else. But if it's not even moving, if it's got that other 400-pound weight on it, like you're a sitting duck. And so what this medicine usually does is give you a perspective on the 400-pound weight that's sitting on the underlying cause of disease,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Yeah. Lift the weight so you can actually experience the grief,
Yeah.
Um, well, let's talk about integration for a second. So someone goes through preparation calls, they uncover things about themselves, they feel prepared logistically, they come, they have their powerful experience, they laugh and cry and yell, and they feel at the end completely different than before the journey. And then they go back to their life with all the same stimulants and inputs and people and stresses. And then you have a few calls with them when they're back home. What do you say on those calls? How do you help people guide them through the integration process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Integration, I now believe firmly preparation and integration are interwoven. So before they even go through the journey, we probably will have started to have talked about integration. And what I do is I kind of let people know that, again, with the caveat that every unique experience is different. Oftentimes, a journey is so expansive that there is a point of contraction when they return home. And you're different, but life now gives you back, dishes out all the same things that you struggled with in the beginning. And what I encourage people to look at is like, again, get out of that mindset that it's a straight line, a one and done. I arrived, and once it's changed, it's always changed. And understand that you will be looping, spiraling in and out of old patterns. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin to pull on the threads of the transformative experience. We're going to get really specific about usually what people experience is they actually feel in their body a different way of being. I felt totally calm and relaxed for the first time. I felt genuinely loved for the first time. I felt the power. I felt the connection. So what we then have to do is, without the assistance of the medicine, figure out how to begin to strengthen those neural pathways, how to bring those ways of being into life. And I often help people create tiny practices that are constantly pinging that thread. Okay, but we got to make it simple. Like 3 to 5 minute practices. So we go down a list of like a weekly practice or practices that are like anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes. Then we kind of approach like, hey, what's something biweekly that you can do that is like a little bit of a stretch for you? Like maybe you haven't been hiking and we commit to one hike a week. And then we go larger. Like, how are you going to begin to expand your community with like-minded people that are going to reflect at you this new way of being? Because also people can go back to the same support systems that they had trouble holding boundaries with, maybe that have addictive behaviors, maybe that have no understanding of who this person is desiring to be. And so we also kind of try to create a like-minded community that will support them in their deepest authenticity. And that can look like an integration group, that can look like a local women's circle. But I basically say, hey, let's look at what's there for you and let's commit to that on a monthly basis.
Got
And
it.
so we're kind of in these integration calls. What I'm doing is setting up, and I'll do 3 post integration calls, and then I will check in with them for a month afterwards and say like, hey, how are all of these things going? And I actually also personally just developed a 3.5 month integration program because I feel like that sense of community is so important. And so I have an open door, like open email policy. Like, I want to hear from you. Like, I want to know how you're doing. We have shared something so deeply profound and spiritual. Like, you always have a place in communication with me. And that's just my own, like, I watch boundaries around that clearly, but like, I'm so happy to hear from clients and know how they're doing. And then, there's options if you want to do extended integration coaching or do this program, like, it's available.
So it sounds the two things I'm hearing are you have these practices
Mm,
that you develop with people, and that might be a mantra, breath work, I'm picturing,
mm.
or some kind of simple 3 to 5 minute practice, as well as building recurring groups of people that share their values.
Yeah,
It sounds like those are the two biggest things that people could
totally.
take away. Yeah.
It's famous where we say don't make any drastic changes right
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
Like we're like, hey, don't end any relationships,
Yeah.
quit any jobs, move. Like give yourself time because a journey makes these things that were sitting underneath larger than life.
Mm-hmm.
And you suddenly see things you haven't seen before and you can't unsee it. Yet it takes time to create a clear forward path from a stabilized and rooted place. So small changes over time actually are generally the most impactful. And there's all sorts of research on that. So what I'm doing with you is saying, hey, if you want to change something major about your environment, we're going to begin to lay the groundwork. So you can do that from a place where you are super centered in yourself
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's not going to destabilize anything, but that's going to move you unerringly forward.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. Maybe last question is kind of a fun one. If you had one message you could put on a billboard, and the billboard would be in every city in the whole world, what would the message say?
Mm. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a juicy one. So this is actually a line in a poem I've written. And it goes, when I am home, I can walk others home because I have been lost before and now I know I will always be found. And the idea is in this kind of trope of we are all just walking each other home, that becoming clear as to why we're doing the healing. Because some people can think, oh, I'm so self-involved. I'm spending all this time or money on my own healing. But the truth is when you have learned how to walk yourself home, you will just start walking other people home. And the impact of that is that then they learn how to walk themselves home. And then they start walking other people home. And then we're all just walking each other home. And we're all, more deeply accepting ourselves so we can more deeply accept others. And there is a profound and extended domino impact when we have truly accepted ourselves. And that doesn't mean we only accept ourselves when we feel like we're perfectly healed. That means we learn to accept ourselves in the process. And by doing so, we develop deeper compassion for ourselves and others. So it would be something like to the extent of when I walk myself home, I can walk others home because I've been lost before and now I know I will always be found.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks. I know it's always a fun but challenging question to answer. Awesome, Ty. Well, thanks for chatting. And that's a wrap.
Oh, it has been such an amazing pleasure to talk to you. It always is.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
on.